Hello, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Matt Connerton, and the Honorable Gary S. Hopper, shapeshifter that he is, has once again this week taken the form of Jane Cormier, thus proving a theory that I've always had. But deep down, Gary really enjoys being a woman.
Oh, my.
So there we go.
We want to say hi to Gary, though.
Yes, hi, Gary.
Hope you're feeling
It's
better.
not really Gary.
Ha ha.
So, Jane, welcome back.
Nice to see you, Matt.
Nice to see you.
It's always nice. You're a sweet man. I love doing the show with you.
Well, thank you. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. So we actually are going to be talking a bit about everything, I think, today. We're going to talk some politics, maybe some Common Core, and other things. So we'll probably have a pretty informative time here.
Good.
And we have a guest. Should we go to our guest?
Yeah, probably. You know, I mean, she made the effort to show up and hang out with us. I guess we probably should.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, our guest is Doris Hohensee. And folks out there probably have seen Doris on many programs here in Manchester because she's been really, really active. Probably one of the most, or if not the most important person in the debate in New Hampshire about Common Core.
Okay.
So she is the number one expert. When I have a question, I go to no one else.
Wow.
Here in New Hampshire, I go to Doris. And so, welcome, Doris.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, listen, this is like Old Home Week.
It is.
And so, Doris, you are running for the state senate.
Yeah, I'm running in Nashua in District 13, which is wards 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yes.
Yep.
Whatever possessed you?
Well, there are a lot of issues.
You think?
Education is one of them, but also jobs. My kids are moving out of state one by one, finding jobs elsewhere, and we moved here because New Hampshire was special, so we're losing that. So I've got the time, and I thought, well, I'm going to step up to the plate and see what I can do.
You know what? She is fabulous. If Nashua was ever so lucky to have you sitting in that seat for that district, they just couldn't do better for someone that's going to watch out for the citizenry, to watch out for small governance, watch out for the kids that are trying to get through college with this insane Common Core that's being, thrown down our throats, yanked down our throats here.
K-12.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, we know why, you're a really great gal as far as governance for the folks. What is, in your mind, the biggest reason why you jumped in? The biggest issue for you?
Well, I thought it'd be a good vehicle to push the important issues forward because I was going to run for state rep. I ran in 2012, and there was a sweep, and I got swept. So I was thinking of coming back, but there was an opening in both spots, and I decided that this would bring my issues to the front.
Okay.
If I made it through, I would be a voice for the people in terms of a lot of issues that the incumbent now is not speaking to. I mean, she's been in there for 14 years, and she brings a different tool set.
Yes, and who is the incumbent?
And the incumbent is Betty Lasky, and she's voted for income taxes 3 times, and now she swears off them. She voted for the LLC tax, the 5% on small business. They had to rush to pull that one out, and now she says, I will never do it again. But she tends to like to increase taxes. When she was asked, would she lower the business profits tax, which is critical. It's the third highest in the country.
Right.
She refused. She voted on roll call. She didn't. So her tool set is a little bit backwards. So I think, she's been there a lot. And thank you for the service. It's time for a change of direction and leadership.
Wouldn't that be fabulous? Absolutely.
It would be nice. It would be nice to be able to bring back New Hampshire the way it was in the 80s and 90s when we came here. It was a growing place.
Yes.
Yeah, there were a lot of jobs, a lot
Absolutely.
of high-paying jobs.
Yeah.
What you mentioned about your kids leaving, I mean, I hear that a lot, that's a constant thing. The younger generations, after they're done getting an education, they pack up and go.
There's no jobs.
Well, 4 out of 6 of them are gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't find the high-tech jobs here that used to be here. They've moved out.
Yeah.
So and we're becoming a gray state. So where are we going to get the money to provide the services to educate the next generation or pay for the disabled, the veteran, the elderly? We've got a problem if we don't correct that.
Right.
So.
And the Senate, being the body that it is, the 24-member Senate, is really the body that I think has not the most impact, because all the bodies are supposed to be evenly powerful.
One's a check on the other.
Right, exactly. But that insulated body that they have become, which was the reason that I challenged David Booten, was because we were finding that the issues, the really, really important issues, were not being discussed, and they were not being debated on the floor of the Senate.
There is a tendency to go to caucus, decide what you're going to do, and I've seen that done in the House too.
Yes.
But there is a bigger tendency to do it in the Senate, and
Much
they
bigger.
love voice votes, not roll calls.
Right.
So there's a lot that kind of goes under the rug, and you don't see it. But yeah, that would have been good to change.
Absolutely.
I
Why
think
the
that-
Senate wasn't now we know that you're really big in Common Core. You've been informing folks. In fact, I learned about Common Core from Doris about 2 years ago, and decided in my little community of Alton, where we would live before, we're now in Hooksett, to take up that with our school board that had voted unanimously for Common Core 5-0.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And so I felt that this was something that we could fight. We took on probably a 6 or 7 month battle to try to inform the folks in Alton. We had open houses. We 3 times went and talked about it with school board and community. And then when the next school board race came up, my husband ran, Carlos Martinez, and he got on the board. And we were able to be the first community in the state to say no to Common Core.
Oh, really?
We flipped it 3-2.
But it's
Wow.
state law that the state can't mandate a community on the curriculum.
Oh, really? Okay.
They can set standards, but they can't mandate the curriculum. So we were just exercising our right as citizens in Alton or Wakefield or
Wherever.
Manchester when it was tried.
Now, Doris, I know that the people out there that are working hard every day, that are paying their taxes, and that have their kids in public school are sometimes not able to be informed about it. And I think the New Hampshire DOE has really, brought that one to the bank, because they have pushed so much regulation through backdoor channels that they've really changed education in New Hampshire.
They've changed the whole system of governance because the legislature didn't do anything. Actually, a good number of them tabled the bills
Right.
when they went through in 2010. But it all came through this regional liaison that met. They were funded by the federal government and the state, and they met with the administrators behind the backs of the school boards. So once it was all ready and in place and a fait accompli, they said, hey, guess what we're doing? And they were bringing the school board up to speed, and it seemed like it was like this thing that they couldn't push back on because it was all in place, and they felt like they were out of the know.
Absolutely.
And they felt they didn't really know where to proceed. And then at one point, I remember in Manchester, we were getting different signals from the state.
Absolutely.
So we had to take the tape from Alton and bring it to Manchester and say, hey, look, the state said that you can pick your own curriculum. Oh, they threatened us. We'd lose our funding if we did. So we had to get their stories straight going from
I
district
don't think
to
the
district.
stories have even been consistently straight even now. Depending on where you go, we're hearing different things from Virginia Barry, who's the
Right. There was all that promise about a waiver for that smarter
now,
balance test.
There's no waivers.
That was just to placate us, I think.
okay.
There was no public hearing when we got into that smarter balance. It was never voted on by the State Board of Education that I can see in the minutes, unless, of course, they forgot to put it in.
Yeah, well.
Because they do edit them kind of dramatically. And so there was no public hearing. We had no voice. The same with Common Core. They did have 2 hearings for Common Core, but they were so well publicized that no one came.
Right.
No one had a clue.
She's being facetious.
Right,
and they happened in July.
Right.
Right.
Same with Manchester, sliding it through in July.
Right. When
and
parents
August.
aren't around to pay attention.
Right.
The really important thing about this is that Common Core ended up being in the school system without, I think at the beginning, even teachers understanding what it is that they were bringing in.
No, but they were trying to be optimistic. Like,
Right.
yes, with some training, yes, we'll be good soldiers. We'll move forward, and
Right.
we'll try to do this because
Right.
they're trained to be professionals and take on a task.
Right.
But in Nashua, they're coming out and saying the smarter balance assessments aren't developmentally appropriate. They would be harmful to the kids. We have a school board that didn't want to administer them. We had school board members that said, I'm afraid if I don't go along with what the state is saying,
Right.
I'll end up in jail.
And fear is
Wow.
what we're talking
This is
about.
the right thing to do, but this is the way I'll vote because I am afraid.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And I had one member actually tell me that.
And I tell you what, it's the fear factor by this just grossly empowered bureaucracy of the
Yeah.
New Hampshire DOE that has administrators. They're kind of complicit, I find, the administrators, but certainly the teachers and the students and the parents feeling like this behemoth can't be moved, and they're trying to make the best of what they've got. But the truth is that we in New Hampshire, the parents, you guys, you have the power, and they just have to be empowered to know to use that power.
Right.
Because this doesn't belong to the New Hampshire DOE. They work for us. We pay their salaries.
Yes, through the federal government. It's circuitous.
Yeah.
So they think they're being paid by the feds and listening to the feds,
Yeah.
but it's our money just taking
Right,
that
of
long
course.
course.
Yeah.
Right, but then they don't feel like they're beholden to us at all. Whereas at the local level, they know they get it directly from us, from our property taxes, that they need to listen to us. We vote them in or out. There's no, and that's what some people have suggested, that maybe next year we need to introduce legislation to elect the state board, so they listen to the
Yeah.
people.
Wouldn't that be
because there's
nice?
not a lot of listening going on.
No, it's again insulated.
And that's again what happens in the Senate. They
Exactly.
seem like they're very insulated. Like my opponent, she gets 93% of her money from corporations and lobbyists and PACs.
Of course.
7% is from the people.
Right.
So her ear is not to the ground.
And it doesn't have to be to the ground, and that's the point. As long as this money, whether it's from the federal government that goes to the state for these bureaucracies like the New Hampshire DOE, or in campaigns, that when you have that money coming in, that's sort of solidifying the result before
Yeah.
you actually.
Well, that's how you figure out who they really work for.
Yeah,
Look at the donor list, and then
You're right.
it's like Jesse Ventura says, they should all have to wear NASCAR suits with patches on them, so you know who owns them.
Oh
you know?
my! Can
Yeah.
you imagine that?
That would be great. That would be fun.
That'd be
would.
colorful.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
for Halloween
And
we should do
informative.
that.
Yeah, there you go.
Informative is the key word, because
Yeah.
so many times they're not forthcoming with telling you exactly,
Of course, yeah,
which is a real shame.
yeah,
A real shame.
absolutely.
Because we don't know whether what's coming or going. And
Right.
the other thing is these teachers, they're afraid to speak out because they're going to be evaluated based on all of this. The administrators aren't. The state board isn't. The State Department isn't. It's only the teachers, the librarians, the guidance counselors, and the principals.
They'll be the one that'll be held hostage in
They're
this.
being thrown under the bus.
Right. So for the folks out there that may not have understood what it is we're talking about, Common Core is a national set of standards,
Copyrighted
correct?
standards. They're fixed. We're not allowed to change them.
Well, you have a small percentage, aren't you?
No.
Like,
You
can add.
have to take all or none of them, and you can supplement by 15%.
Right.
But you can't change them. That's why they were saying if there are mistakes in it,
Right.
they're ironed in.
So the people that out there that try to figure this is really very difficult to understand. So we have standards that have been given to us by the feds, and but they say they're not federal standards, but they are indeed federal standards.
They're funded by the feds.
Right. So what is the difference between the standard and the curriculum?
Very little, because you've got standards and you've got a test that tests whether or not you've taught the standards.
Right.
So your curriculum has to match the two.
Right. So see, and why is that the way they've done this?
They're circumventing 3 federal laws which say that the
Really?
federal government may not standardize our curriculum, may not have a national database, which they're doing also.
Right.
Sure,
Because they're
yeah.
paying us to standardize the format of our databases, 400 data points per student, and then they're paying us to share it. So they have all the information. The tests are online, so they suck that in right as the kid
So-
takes the test. So
this
they
is-
have all the information.
And this is what is so hard for the parents that haven't been able to get into the debate to understand.
Yeah.
There's a federal law that says that you cannot have a federal government come in and say, "Here is your curriculum."
There's
They
3
know that.
federal laws that
So-
explicitly state that. Plus, the 10th Amendment saying anything that's not explicitly given to the feds belongs to the state.
states.
And we historically know
right.
it belongs to the
Right.
state.
Right.
So they're playing a game of
Right.
dodgeball.
It's a 3-part game for clarity's sake, because I know that you could state this stuff in your sleep, but the folks out there might not. So you have the standards, and then you have the curriculum that's driven from these standards, and then you have the assessment, which in New Hampshire is the Smarter Balance Assessment. Okay, the assessment is the real reason why I believe anyway we have Common
you
Core.
also know that Pearson, who's helping us develop some of the assessment, is also providing 80% of our curriculum nationwide.
Right.
In Canada, they provide 100% of the curriculum.
Who is this?
Pearson Publishers, a British company.
Okay.
It seems to have bought out one publisher after another. So there's a little bit of conformity of the textbooks.
Oh, okay.
Because
They own them
they
all.
all have
Okay.
different names on them, but they're all owned by Pearson.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So there's a real monopoly going on.
Yeah,
And their foundation was sued successfully in New York because the foundation will come in and lobby and wine and dine the administrators.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And then when they get the contracts, they make millions.
Yeah.
So see, they've subverted the whole process
Yeah.
to get away from the curriculum issue with the federal government. They've found a way to wiggle this all around so that it looks like, oh, well, these are good standards for everybody. However, the standards themselves are lowering
Right.
the bar.
But the interesting thing is the unions nationwide are starting to come out. The NEA and the AFT
Good.
are both coming out against the testing. They say it's creating a toxic environment. We didn't learn anything from No Child Left Behind. It was too much testing, and we didn't have, we had high expectations that never came about. So they threw it and scrapped the whole thing out.
Right.
Yeah.
Millions and millions
now
of
we have
dollars.
much worse.
But now we have much worse, and they're saying they want Arnie Duncan to resign, the U.S.
And they
Secretary
should.
of
Oh my
Education.
God, he's terrible.
They've had it. They think that this test, blame, and punish system needs to go.
Right.
It does need to go. Can you explain for the folks what is a data point and why is that important in this message?
Every student is tracked from beginning of school to the end and through the workforce on 400 data points. Name, their gender, their age, their grades, their behavior, their
hang on.
financial background,
When
their
people hear
religious
this,
background, their
they-
political background.
Right. When the folks hear this, though, it sounds crazy, right? Who's they that are tracking?
Well, the federal government's paying the state, and we
There
went
you
in
go.
April of 2012. The New Hampshire Board of Education, in the minutes, said that our system, our longitudinal database, was up and running. So this is where the teachers go into the portal and fill out the information on
go.
the students. This isn't the tests that are online that suck the information immediately to the consortia, which immediately gives them to the US DOE.
To the wonderful cloud that then
So-
keeps that information on every student in the.
So they have it
Yeah.
coming and going, whether it's an online test or it's a paper and pencil test. They have a way to get it all onto these data points.
Okay, so this is the building of the database you were talking about.
Huge.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
It's huge.
And,
All right.
and using it in a way
tracking.
to go way beyond what they used to track. Remember, when we had tests, they used to be, I don't know if you're young or old enough, but I remember when I was a kid, we didn't have assessments. We had achievement tests.
Achievements.
Right. Yep.
They judged
Yep.
if you achieved to understand that whatever it was that you were
Subject matter.
Right.
Now
The
you
act-
don't. Now it's not about achievement. It's about trying to get behavioral information, philosophic
Dispositional.
disposition. This is
Yeah.
awful.
A disposition
Terrible.
is the student's values, attitudes, or beliefs.
It's none of their
So
business.
this is to whether or not the child is politically correct.
Okay.
So we
yeah.
can track a little dissident right from birth and find out whether he's going to be an agreeable sort or he's a little bit of a curmudgeon that kind of like upsets the apple cart, as maybe little boys do, but
Right.
on issues that are important to the state.
So is that the end game, you think? Is that-
Absolutely.
that's what they're.
The
It's
information.
in there. It's
It's
part of
part
the
of it.
plan.
Yeah.
It's not crazy, folks. I know you might think that it's crazy, but that's the end game, is to get as much information on your family and your children into that national database as they possibly can. And we should say stop. We should say no more and stop worrying about what the penalty is or the money that we're going to lose. Our kids are in our way of life.
The way they did it was wrong too, because we have a Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA. And every time private information goes to anyone, they used to say, okay, would you sign this release for your minor child? If you're over 18, you sign your own.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
So that's how they get around that?
No, it
Get
Well,
you
no,
to
no,
sign
no.
a waiver?
That's the federal law,
okay.
recognizing our rights as parents, protecting our children. Then they just made new regulations to
okay.
circumvent
Rewrote it.
the law. They didn't go back to the Congress. They just made all these all these
Through statutory changes.
no, through regulatory changes.
Regulatory, there you go.
And
right.
they put in so that all these different agencies that might want to do sometimes statistical work or, in educational studies or something or surveys on this, they can have
They
access.
opened it all up.
In California, they were having Arnie Duncan come to visit one day, and they didn't have money for a podium and do it upright, so they sold data They sold student data to get the money to put on the posh whatever to have Orange
Do you have
Dunkin'
kids?
No.
Okay, well, I tell you what.
Be careful.
If you,
That's why I don't have kids, because I'm careful.
Yeah, right. Probably a good thing. No, but I have to say, every parent should they should be abhorrent of this. This should be just absolutely beyond the pale.
I mean, we're safe than sorry for everything else. You know, we have seat
Right.
belts, we have headgear when we put on rollerblades. Why aren't we being a little bit safe about where this data is going and who has access to it? It may not just be administrators that abuse this.
Yeah. Of
It
course
could
not.
be that
It's
it's
gonna-
hacked, like in New York.
Absolutely.
It was hacked out of the clouds, these data clouds that they have. So, I mean, it's just ripe for all kinds of problems.
So now in Manchester had its own set of issues because the mayor has come out and said that he doesn't want to use Smarter Balance. And recently, I believe Virginia Barry has said that is impossible, correct? That they have got to use Smarter Balance assessments here
She
in Manchester.
promised the waiver to many, many districts,
Right.
Londonderry, Dover, a lot of districts.
Which isn't forthcoming
And they,
now.
they put in their paperwork, they're sitting there waiting diligently, and she lets it get closer and closer to the
And then
deadline.
it's no.
And then she's going to disappoint, which is, it's not my
Wow.
fault. It's the federal government won't give it to me. Now, so what she did is she filled out all these big, long, 100-page applications for grants from the federal government. I promise that New Hampshire districts will do this, and we'll do this,
Sign
and
it
we'll do
away.
this. They accept it and give us money. So she made promises that she shouldn't have made.
Right.
She should have had some oversight, maybe legislative oversight.
You think?
I mean, why are we having one person, an appointed person, have all this power?
Right. That's
that we
right
as
for
parents-
issues. Absolutely.
So how do you undo that? So the unions are saying, you know, we need to be bold. We need to step out there. We need to cross the line. They've had it because why aren't the administrators that bring in all these crazy ideas that are untested, why aren't they evaluated and their salaries attached to student performance based on their
Because they're
crazy
attached to the vessel that's put this into place. That's why.
Right. So it's only the lower end of the education spectrum, the teachers, the principals, the ones that do the hard work. They're the ones that
Right.
can be labeled ineffective, and once you're labeled, they can dismiss you. See, some people think this is great. We can break unions. I'm like, no, this is not right.
Not how to.
It
Not
doesn't
how to
matter
have
whether
you
you're
talk about
for
that.
or against unions.
Right.
This is not the right way to go about it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because we're not even making the decisions. Some consortia is writing the tests that decide and determine the cut scores of who's effective, who's not effective, and who needs to go.
Do you know that they've implemented this, and New Hampshire's no different, with teachers never having seen the test?
Wow.
Parents are not allowed
Yeah.
to see the
They
test.
sign off. In Texas, for them to see the new unit for history, isn't it history, the new history unit? The teachers have had to sign a document promising not to divulge anything to anyone
Wow.
about those
I
tests.
think that was in C-Scope. They did that years ago. I don't know if they're still
it was
doing
some-
it.
It was something
It
that
could
happened
be.
recently.
Bizarre.
Well, I know the precedent was set in Texas
Yeah.
years ago.
No
so when
kidding.
parents
Huh.
would come on parent-teacher night,
Can't
they
say
would be very coy
Strange.
and very reluctant to divulge anything. The
Yeah.
good teachers would say, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but, and then spill a gut. But
Right.
they weren't supposed to, and if I got out, they would be in trouble.
Right. They signed on the dotted line to
Right.
not divulge the new standards for history in Texas.
See, I would be mystified if I did have kids and I went to like a parent-teacher conference night or something and I'm talking to a teacher and asking questions and I'm told that, well, I'm not allowed to tell you that. I'd be
Right.
like, what?
Right.
What do you mean you're not allowed to tell me?
Yeah,
That
you're
doesn't
right.
make any sense.
You know what, Matt, though? I think so many parents for so long, whether it's New Hampshire or anywhere else,
They're busy and they trust.
they trust,
Right.
and they've also been told, sit down, we know better.
Right,
We're
right.
the professionals here, we know what we're doing, sit down.
Right.
But they also lace it with a lot of presumptive words like this is a rigorous curriculum. You know, like where was that ever proved? But they always use all these self-congratulatory
Sound great.
adjectives.
Yeah.
So they have all these wonderful sound bites, and if you just you got to get rid of those if you're even going to have a
It's
conversation.
marketing. It's all
Oh,
marketing.
it's
Sure it
Yeah.
is. It's marketing, and we have to empower the parent that understands on some level that this is not right, that something
Yeah.
about this doesn't smell right,
Yeah.
and empower them to say, don't accept it.
Right.
Don't accept what you're not comfortable with. Do not let anybody or any group tell you
Yeah.
that that's palatable.
Especially when it comes to your kids.
But
Oh
we
my
have
gosh.
teachers that are professionals. They're trained. And we want the teachers to go into the classroom and teach each individual child. We don't need a uniform curriculum because children don't learn all the
My
same.
goodness.
And so
Common sense.
And we want patient, dedicated teachers, and we can't undermine them. We've got to get out there and protect them. If the Democrats don't want to protect them and they want to throw them under the bus with this new education reform, so be it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go out there and make sure that they have that right locally
Right.
to decide how to teach that child.
And that's the thing. When you teach to the test, right, which is what Smarter Balance is, these are so powerful within the scope of the Common Core, strategy. They become everything. The test becomes the vehicle or the most important part of the learning process. You cannot learn how to learn by a test.
It's
Right,
debilitating.
right.
Some of the younger kids, they're cognitively not developed enough to do the abstract questions.
We're
that they're
training
being-
that.
So we're having kids that are stressed out. They're saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter. Just do your best," and they feel like failures.
Right.
And they
Yeah.
come out and they feel crushed.
Right.
So instead of building our kids up and empowering them to feel good about themselves and their cognitive powers, we're teaching them the opposite.
Right.
We're crushing one kid after another. The math is so convoluted that you can't follow it. And as a mathematician myself, I don't even want to follow
You
it.
can't
It's just,
even figure out where they're coming from
like-
to get there.
Really?
there are shortcuts to learning, and why would you take the most circuitous route? It's deliberately confusing.
It is. It's absolutely
So-
bizarre.
Yeah.
If you've sat and looked
The
at that
only
math.
thing that we have in an unlimited amount is the potential of our next generation, those kids. So our teachers need to unlock that potential, not crush it. And if we don't get behind our teachers, it's over.
Right. And mostly teachers usually go into teaching because they love offering themselves and their talent and their gifts and their knowledge,
Right.
in an active way through interaction in the education process with kids. When you're stuck to the narrow-mindedness of a test, there's no give and take. There's no sharing. There's no figuring out, well, Johnny, I have to do this with Johnny so that he understands that point. But Sally, she gets it like this. When you're a good teacher in the classroom, you're juggling 20 balls at one
Right.
time if you're a good teacher, and you learn how to do that as
Right.
a teacher. That's what makes effective teaching. That's what makes learning work for kids in 30 kid rooms, classrooms.
Yeah.
But trying to make this just one uniform, what a losing proposition.
And
Right.
the teachers might take an extra day. Okay, this class has a problem, and they do a little remedial work. But if you're on a schedule to a test,
That's right.
it's full steam ahead.
Yeah.
Isn't
it sad? It's sad.
And we should have learned with No Child Left Behind. And here we are, trusting again the new reform.
And they doubled down, and it's worse.
It is.
It is the
So,
worst thing. So now we've had a couple of bills that went in the last session. And we tried hard to get on the floor of the House, and we debated Common Core. There was a bill, I believe Representative Peterson also put in a bill trying to get rid of Common Core. And,
it wasn't getting rid of it. It was saying the state couldn't mandate it, so
Okay.
the districts could have taken it.
Yeah.
It really wasn't anything that prohibited.
Okay.
It just limited the state from
Telling us.
forcing, mandating.
Yes. Okay.
Downshifting costs and all that, which nobody ever calculated, because if you
They still don't.
calculate it, you have to acknowledge that there's an unfunded mandate. But
Right.
if you don't calculate it, what's unfunded?
Right. Well,
Right.
there was no numbers done with this. I
Any
mean,
of
talk
it.
about all
No
of the
kidding.
computer,
Wow.
the broad base, the broadband that has to go in to do the on-computer testing.
Well, they gave the districts a little bit of extra money, so that must be everything you need.
Crazy. And then, of course, training the teachers. And don't forget, you have to update everything all the time.
Sure, yeah.
So this is a never-ending expense to
It's
the
a whole new
taxpayer.
infrastructure. in
I
the
don't know.
schools.
Have you seen one? I have not seen in anything that we've looked at for 2 years one number from any realm of any group that's asked the question of what this might cost.
No,
a school-
nobody
a school
calculates
district.
that. They've made it so difficult to calculate, and they don't encourage the districts to calculate. And they're so
Yeah.
busy putting in the new reform, who has time to sit there and scratch their head and try to calculate it?
Backward.
Well, is that what they did with No Child Left Behind as well? Because everyone always says that was massively unfunded, and I mean, what do you know? I mean, when they brought that in or tried to bring it in, was that also a case of, they weren't talking about numbers? It was just like, here, don't worry,
Well,
it'll all work out.
They had schools that were in need of improvement, and they
Yeah.
expected every school to remediate itself and get up to proficiency. They had a deadline
Yeah.
where they all had to be proficient. And as we got closer and closer to that deadline, and the districts realized that they weren't going to
Gonna
make
make
the
it,
mark,
yeah.
and the penalties were serious, they had to do something. So they forgave us all.
Right.
They got rid of that, and everybody breathed a sigh of relief, thinking, okay, so they've learned something.
Right.
But then they came in with this new thing, which,
Has the technology side gone amok?
well,
with
the other
Common
one didn't
Core.
have the technology and the database and
Okay.
the tracking and the
so
data
this was
mining.
like on steroids,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a little deeper
Yeah.
into the
Wow.
into the controlling our districts before then. The other one you had, like the NECAP, was a regional testing consortia, a few states in the New England region. Now we're supposedly half the country in one consortia. The other half is in the other consortia. Even though states are trying to pull out,
Right.
some
Yeah.
of them have had it.
It's a tough pickle now to
And there's
figure
some
out.
states that are like, they know it's a political hot potato, so they'll say, okay, we're pulling out of Common Core, only to do like Manchester did, rename something and it's really Common Core.
Right.
Okay, we've diffused that animosity, let's move on.
Right.
Or they'll do the same with the test. Well, we're not going to do that, we're going to do something, but it's all the same.
Right. They'll change 3 questions and give it a
Wow.
different name, and it's the same
Right,
test.
so
Yeah.
it's
Wow.
like, let's not play games and fool the people, because once they find out, they're twice burned.
Right.
So it doesn't build trust.
No, there is no trust. So the Senate had a opportunity to take this up as well, and I believe they tabled it. Did they
They had
not?
a bill to study it, and it
I
didn't
believe they
go
tabled
it
it,
didn't
yeah.
go anywhere.
Yeah,
They like tabling it because then they don't have to say they voted for or against it.
exactly. So they do that
So-
a lot in the Senate, which was another reason I believe why we have a few good Liberty candidates.
There
that-
was a lot of mothers that decided now was the time, especially with this Common Core, that they wanted to get in and protect their kids. I mean, there's something about mothers and protecting
Sure.
kids.
Sure.
So if we got in, we would be able to at least start the dialogue and see how far we could move it. Because there was no dialogue in the state Senate last time.
Right.
It was all in the House, which is the people's house, which was
It's
good.
just supposed to be the people's
And
house.
that's well, there is more dialogue and there is more
In
diversity.
the House, there is only
There
because
is.
there's 400 plus people.
Right.
It's much harder to isolate anything or to insulate anything in the House simply by the number
Sure.
of people that's in there.
So you always get a lot of different perspectives.
Sure.
It's good, and people voice them. Whereas we need to bring that to the Senate.
Well, yeah, we really do. Those firewalls that they keep saying that they're offering for conservatives. This past session, the Medicaid expansion, the gas tax, those weren't firewalls. Those were progressive, bills that have not helped the taxpayer or the families of New Hampshire.
Right.
So it's not a good
Well,
thing.
we need people with a new perspective. I think some people, like my opponent, has been there a little bit too long, and it's not supposed to be a citizen legislature, not a career.
I'm amazed. You mentioned that your opponent supported an income tax, a state
3
income tax at one
times.
point. Yeah, I'm always amazed.
3 times by roll call. She may have done it more, but 3
Yeah.
traceable, not just a voice vote. Maybe she was here or there.
Sure.
3 times on the record.
It always amazes me because I would think that would be so politically suicidal in this state that has always been so firmly, no state income tax,
You would think.
no state sales, and yet it still comes up, and every time it comes up, I'm just like, wow.
Well, how did that work? But don't forget.
These are urban areas, and these are well-funded candidates. She has $40,000-$50,000
Yeah.
to, stomp anybody that comes and
Right.
tries to challenge her.
And don't
Yeah.
forget, they say around campaign time, you'll see a lot of these folks.
Oh yeah, they changed their
They
tune.
changed the
They
tune. I
whistle
mean,
Dixie.
we know
Sure.
that Senator Booton did it himself. Tax fighter. He's a tax fighter. Well, look at what he voted for. But when
Yeah.
the election comes around, they all become, we're not for taxes, no
Right.
state, income, whatever. They'll say whatever they can to get in because it's
course.
about being in power.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's just so bad.
They spend all their time running for re-election.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, they don't have to. Not when you have a lot of money. It's the upstarts that challenge them that have to walk the entire district. When you've got that much money, you just mail the district.
Yeah.
Well,
True.
once
My
Yeah.
the-
opponent doesn't walk.
That's
the
true. She
district.
doesn't
Yeah.
need to walk because she's been there in the name recognition. But don't forget, her challengers probably weren't going door to door with an active voting record to go, hey, look
Right.
at this. I know that happened in my district. That's why we got so close. Because again and again, people that answered those doors said, we did not know that that's how he voted. again and again. I mean, I suspect that probably happened. If you're in a tough district like Doris is in, where it's a progressive district, and you're a conservative small government gal, right?
Yeah.
Well, she plays up the social issues, like she's going to
Don't
protect
they
you
all?
on these social issues. I'm not going to fight them on the social issues. That's not my focus.
We're burning down. The ship's burning down. Let's stop talking about the social issues.
Let's focus on jobs.
Of course.
Right.
Let's focus on getting the state, in order.
Yeah,
Right.
look at all of the commercials, the political commercials. You're a guy, so you must have a different take on this. I don't know if you've been seeing any of them. They're all social issues.
Yes.
Virtually every one that the progressive left is putting out right now against their opponent, right? Are all
I don't
female.
watch them, yeah.
Oh, I see them all the time. I see them on the internet, when you're online,
Yeah.
on TV, the social issues, war on women. I'm aghast that we've put women in the position to be so feeble-minded to think that that's all we care about?
Right.
Really? Our kids have no jobs.
Right.
Our kids are being dumbed down in school, and we're going to care, about birth control being bought by taxpayers? I mean, it shouldn't be
But
happening.
it sways a number of young women voters, and it's
my
effective,
goodness.
and they've done
It
it.
is
The,
sad.
the Obama campaign was effective in
I
using
know.
it,
That's why they're doing it.
and that's why they're
But
using
we
it.
have to start saying, hey, ladies, we're not sheep.
Let's look at a few more issues.
Absolutely.
Right.
No reason to do that, but they are winning that way.
There's some though, and I don't know if you know, Jane, you know this. I'm an independent, and so from my perspective, it seems like I'm noticing that in the Republican Party, you like you're both saying that stop focusing so much on the social issues and focus on the economic issues, but you've also got like Gary, for example, who's a very sort of traditional, very conservative guy who does want to focus on the social issues, and it seems like there's that, which I think is fascinating as an outsider. It's fascinating.
What do you
to
mean
me
does want to
watch.
focus? What do you mean?
Like Gary's very, he's very pro-family and whatnot. I don't mean just in his voting record, because I'm sure you both are too, but he wants to talk about those things.
Right.
He not to speak for him because he's not here, but he seems to feel like it's a bad move to kind of disengage and say,
I agree.
let's not, but to kind of shift the focus away from that, because he feels that at the heart of some of the economic issues is, the family situation with the high divorce rate and all
Right.
that. So
Well, that's a fact.
yeah,
Whether people like that
and
or not.
I think he's right, and I agree with him too on that. But
You're saying, so how can you have it both ways?
yeah, because it seems like that's kind of a fight that's going on in your party.
It's a fight because it's in the platform.
Yeah.
If it was, and there is no reconciling it, but there are many different groups within
Yeah.
the party.
Like you've got the libertarian wing who really would rather not,
Of course.
know.
Yeah, we do. But you know what? While everybody looks as that as some sort of defect, right? Because the progressive left are like little lemmings.
I think
they go
it's-
right behind each other.
It's a good conversation.
I think it's healthy,
I think it is too.
but it also does make you vulnerable in some ways.
Okay, but you know what? Let's look at it clearly. While everybody is saying, okay, I'm pro-life. I will
Yeah.
always be pro-life. I will die pro-life. I just believe that's there's no liberty if there's no life. It's got to come first.
Yeah.
Okay? That's just the way I am.
Sure.
However, I'm smart enough to understand that with the way we are heading as a nation in the financial mismanagement of our state and our government, federal government, we can't fight all battles all at the same time.
Right. Right.
Where the ship is going down. We will soon be looking like Greece. What good is that for anyone to try to take this bomb, right, and throw it when there's such a multitude
Right.
of dysfunction happening that, to me, it's illogical
Yeah.
to go at that only on the
Right.
life issue.
Right.
Right. I'd like
Yeah.
to see some type of ceasefire. I mean, because we've wasted so much time.
Yeah.
We're not going to get anywhere.
It's not the Republicans driving it, though. It's the
They're-
progressives.
They're provoking it.
Of course.
But
Well, they are.
because it works for them.
You know what, Matt? You
Well,
watch-
sure. No. I mean, it does. It does work for them.
Because
sure,
it
but-
works for them politically.
Oh, yeah,
but
of
you
course.
see, those are low information voters that believe that that's the only issue that, those big bad conservatives, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. The big bad conservatives will balance the budget,
Right.
okay?
Right.
We'll tell people, you can't spend that. That's not right. That's not a good thing. stop the press here. But they will lead you down the road to believe that we're only all about these social issues. And as someone that is firmly entrenched as a conservative,
Right.
I can tell you that is absolutely not true for most of us.
Right.
Well, they also take what they feel is the most targetable aspect of the Republicans, and they won't have a conversation with me, and they'll just say that I am such and such, and they'll just say I'm the spokesman of Bill O'Brien.
Right.
Sure.
Without even having a conversation, not knowing, because Betty was out of office for 2 years, that I opposed his biggest education bill.
Sure.
And I helped successfully build a coalition to defeat it. So how can I be his spokesman? But that's what they'll go around.
Right.
They'll pick something. And last time, my opponent for the state rep, she went around and said, I would like to take science out of the classroom. All 6 of my kids ended up in science, physics, computer science,
that
you
is
name
the
it.
stupidest thing I've ever
So
heard.
I had doors shutting on me that you want to take evolution out of the classroom. It's like, hello.
Right, but see how they
they'll
attack
pick
that.
something. They
Right.
won't have the conversation, but they assume the worst.
and then
and
they
then
go
they
with
start
that.
playing
That's
with
a Linsky.
Well, I have to say, though, and again, speaking as an independent and as an observer, one of the reasons I'm an independent is both. It's
Because
not.
you don't like this game.
You can't say it's just I mean, you can say it, but it's not like it's just the progressive left plays these dirty games with the Republicans, and there's no.
Okay,
I
well,
mean,
name
both
name-
sides.
Okay, but name the one that the Republican does.
I don't
What
like-
kind of
yeah.
game?
Because-
I hear Republicans talk about Obama like he's some Republicans like he's a Kenyan-born secret Muslim terrorist who wants to ruin America
Okay,
from
but
within.
is that really like? Okay,
I mean, that's what I hear
that's
on
not-
conservative talk radio.
That's not mainstream conservative talk, though. You can look at just what's being played for the advertisements, the political advertising that's
Sure.
happening right now.
Sure.
Okay, and if you put what you just mentioned, which is out there,
Sure,
there is
yeah.
some people that actually will go that route,
Right.
for whatever reason.
Right.
And you try to measure that against this war on women that has been put out on every single facet of media, you can't even compare it. You have this big and this big going at it. There are too many Republicans on different issues to do that with.
Right, but I think both parties get into trouble when see the war on women thing. On the one hand, have Democrats exploited that and caricatured you as a party? Absolutely. That phrase "war on women" is very hyperbolic and it's not fair. I agree with you on that.
Right.
But when you have people in your party, and it's not your fault as individual Republicans, but when you have people in your party like Todd Legitimate Rape Aiken, remember him who said a regional figure who no one would have ever even heard of outside of where I don't even remember what state he's from. But when he gets caught making a comment like that,
But he's not
and
the
then
norm.
no, I know that, and it's not fair. But as a party, again, not as individuals, but as a party,
Okay.
you created an
See, I think
opportunity.
you're having to go pretty. I understand what you're saying, but I
Yeah.
think you're going pretty far afield. I think that we certainly have people that, regrettably maybe didn't voice things properly.
Sure,
in the
and that
conservative-
happens on both sides.
It does happen, but
Yeah,
I
oh,
think that it
absolutely.
happens much more on the left toward the conservative than it does the conservative toward the progressive.
I really don't care. I think it should be 2 individuals in every race.
It should
You
be.
have a party
Oh, I
behind
agree.
you,
I
but
agree
you
with
ought to
you.
be looking
Yeah.
at your opponent and addressing your opponent.
Yeah.
And stop bringing in all this extra baggage that might be around her in the party, because
Yeah.
if she disavows half of it, you shouldn't be attacking her on that.
Yeah.
So you should be looking at the individual, not some stereotype that you
no,
made up.
I completely agree.
And
yeah.
I have to tell you, while we're talking about this, this issue, I love this guy. I am not one of these happy-go-lucky Republicans. Okay, I have my own problems with the Republican Party.
Yeah.
So while we're discussing this, I in no way want to let you think that I'm the outsider in the Republican Party. Make no mistake about it. Jane does not.
Oh, I know. I heard what you said in the green room. No, and I respect that about you, and I often say that about Gary too. Gary's very critical of the party. Anyone who's critical of their own party, because that's intellectually honest. When you look at your own party and you say, well, I'm not necessarily running with the herd all the time
No.
here. So
No,
and
not
so
at all.
I admire that,
Well, it is what it is. But to me, it's
because too many people do run with the herd,
and that's the problem.
Yep.
I would much rather sit down and talk conservative and progressive, because those are in both parties.
Right.
You know, the Republican Party is not conservative anymore. They might have that as a talking point on the left.
Sure.
But there's an awful lot of
Well, you've
Republicans.
got your factions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look at the person I primaried.
Right,
Okay.
right,
Runs
yeah.
as a conservative. Now, take the social issues out. Conservative.
But what's
should
his
be,
literature now? Is it more moderate? I'm a moderate now.
I'm
that-
sure it will be.
Once
now
you-
that he's going against
Once
a
you get to
Dem,
the general
Yes,
election,
he'll be
yeah,
a moderate.
That's
so
the game.
I don't. It's a broken word. I don't like using the word at all. I just
Really?
say this
See,
is
to
where
me
I
it's more
stand on the
effective.
issues.
Yeah.
Conservative usually means, in the political way, it's in my mind, not so much the social issues, but small governance. To me, that's what conservative means to me.
Yeah.
That less is more. More does not necessarily bring better things.
Right, right.
And we have to be more accountable, both in what we offer and in our people that are in the system. They have to be accountable to the folks.
Yeah.
And to me, that's when I say conservative, that's what, now, I'm in no way disavowing, I will, like I said, die a pro-personhood person.
Sure.
Pro-personhood. That means before the baby's born and until you die a natural death. To me, personhood's the way to go.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't find that political. I find that philosophical more. Political to me is let's pay the bills.
Right.
Let's do the right thing. Let's stop raping the taxpayer with more and more of their income
Right.
so that we can offer this big behemoth of social programs
Right.
that in the end don't service the people they're supposed to service.
Yeah.
Handouts don't work after a certain amount of time.
Right.
A handout might.
Right,
Handouts do not.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. I mean, and this is good to hear a real strong independent voice because it instructs me. It educates me
Yeah.
as to where the debate is,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, I think there's a lot more independents than either factions. I don't know if that number.
I don't know what
in
the
New Hampshire.
I don't know what it is in New Hampshire now. I know nationally the last poll I saw was 42%.
Yeah, I believe
I
that.
believe it's about
42%.
like that in New Hampshire.
I think
Yeah.
New Hampshire's probably a little bit above
Because
the norm.
that's
I
what
would
I
think
thought.
so,
They were in
too,
the,
yeah.
I think
it'd be
so.
30,
Yeah.
30, 40 in a city where, but the Democrats have a slightly bigger
sure they do.
Yeah.
number in the 30s than,
Right.
than
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah. So it's
yeah.
just very interesting how that all goes.
Yeah.
So what are your plans now in your campaign coming up?
I'm going to continue going door to door. I'm finding it very interesting, meeting a lot of people. It is amazing how many people are in one district. And I'm going to see what I can do to raise a little bit of money and maybe do a mailing or two towards
What
the
is your
end.
website?
DorisHohensey.com.
Very easy, DorisHohensey.com. And if anybody would like to help your campaign, they can contact you at your site.
At my site, you can contribute, you can volunteer, you can.
Don't forget,
contact
you
me.
don't have to give money, right? I know money's great. I shouldn't say that. Don't disavow the money. But I'll tell you what, when you're a struggling campaign and you have so many doors to knock, somebody to go with you to knock those doors or make phone calls.
Oh, yeah.
Hold a sign.
Yeah.
It's never a
Or
small thing.
volunteer to have a sign in a lawn.
Yes.
Or
Right,
to
right.
talk to 5 friends to
Right.
say, okay, I've met this candidate and you might want to find out a little bit more about her.
You should please spell your last name too for people who.
Hohensee, Hohensee.
Okay.
Just the way it sounds.
It's a German name.
Hohensee, yeah.
Hohensee.
Okay. All right. So you're in a liberal
I'm
district.
in a Democratic district.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't expect. Although I talked to when I first started in politics in 1990, there were 2 Democrat women that were my state senators in Nashua, and I always had to battle against them in education.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one the other day, and she said, "Well, when she ran, it was held by the Republicans for 100 years, and then she was the first to break through." And then talked to Gary Lambert, who won in 2010. He said, "Well, it was 100 years on the Democratic side." So
Sure.
whatever. But those 2 women were my role models, even though they were Democrats, on how to address the public, how to, they were very nice, wonderful people. And I think in that 20-year period, we have come to understand each other and respect each other on education. So
Yeah.
I'm very pleased with the dialogue that I was able to have over the years with my first state senators.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
I called one of them because she was in the House last time and asked her, was she going to run? Because she
Who was this?
Mary Nelson.
Okay.
And she voted the right way on some of these Common Core issues, and she spoke to me. And I think she took a lot of courage to go against her party and do what was right for the teachers. And I thought that was great.
But that's honest representation.
That's what I want.
That's what we want.
So I wanted a Democrat that was honest to run again and let the voters decide Democrat, Republican.
Right.
But the more honest people that run, the better.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I'm pleased. You know, some of the Democrats in Nashua are very good people. And
I have no doubt about it. I mean, I've met a lot of Dems on my side, knocking doors. People,
Yeah.
I find that the Democrats, when we would engage, a lot of times it was weird when I was knocking doors. I learned so much during this run. We may not have had the result that I would have preferred, but I tell you what, it was fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And I learned so much. When you would go in, many times this happened a lot. You'd have one that was the Republican and one was the Dem.
Yeah.
And when you had that, invariably they engaged you in debate. Either come on in on the porch, or why don't you come in and sit down at the table. And it almost invariably happened when there were two viewpoints. I found that so interesting.
Yeah, that is.
It didn't happen when it was a Republican so much, or a Dem by itself, but both together.
Huh, interesting. Yeah.
It was odd.
Yeah.
I tell you, it was a couple of times sitting there, like a little bit uncomfortable going,
Really?
"Oh,
Yeah.
But in the end, you just have to stick to what you believe. Because
Right.
once you get off of that, you're not being honest. You guys
Right.
just stick to what you believe and give it what you got.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah.
And there's many households where they'll put both signs out on
Yeah.
the lawn, his and her.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yes. And because they respect each other.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So it's really good.
Yeah. That must be tough, though.
No, it isn't.
Mixed
I mean,
marriage, yeah.
Yeah.
it makes for interesting conversation.
Why, is your hubby a different...
He's an independent,
Okay.
I think.
Well, you are too, aren't you?
I was an independent for a long time. For one reason, you got all the mailing.
Yeah.
You got both sides. So you were engaged in the conversation.
Ah,
Yeah.
very
If
good.
you were a Republican or Democrat, they didn't mail to you so much. But if you were in the middle,
Wowie
They
zowie.
That's a good,
They
good
wanted to
point.
talk.
Yeah, that's true.
So when I decided to run, I selected the party.
My goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's really smart.
Well, that's what a lot of people do because it
Yeah.
gives them the flexibility. So I know that the independents, they lean one way or another, but they want to be part of the debate. They
Is
don't
that
want.
what,
They
did you
don't want
know
to miss
this?
the conversation.
Did you realize that?
About the mailing?
Yeah.
Not specifically. I hadn't thought of it. It's an interesting point. It hadn't
you'll
really,
be
it hadn't really
called.
occurred to me. Yeah.
You'll be called
Interesting.
quite a bit more too, because
Yeah.
you're the voter on the fence. So they
Right.
need to bend your ear.
Wow. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Doris just schooled us.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. That's
Me
true
neither.
though. Yeah.
So it's
might
not
have to
always
become an
it's not
independent.
always indecision. It's not that you don't know where you want to be.
Right.
It's just that you want to be in the center of the debate.
Right.
Here, you see both sides.
Yes. You see-
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, Zowie.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she's smart if nothing else, right? Doris is the smartest gal in the room. She doesn't miss a trick.
No, I get motivated. I grew up with 6 brothers, so I mean, I didn't need a feminist movement. From birth.
Family. Jeez.
I
What are you,
understood.
Catholic?
My family's Catholic. Yes. You learn, and you had that competitive
You
world.
had to.
You did. By the time you were a teenager, who needed the
That's
feminists?
right.
I mean, I knew how to defend myself against men.
You
Yeah.
had 7 brothers. I had
Six.
six brothers. I had 7 brothers and sisters. Wow. I was the last of 8.
Wow.
And let me tell you, I got if I didn't stand up, man, I got squished. So-
Wow, I
So we
bet,
both had
yeah.
this. We both had the same type of upbringing.
Wow.
Yeah. Catholic too.
Yeah.
Irish Catholic and
Irish
French
Catholic,
Canadian.
yeah.
So lots of kids. My dad was one of 15.
Wow.
Holy moly!
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know what? They were so poor. My poor dad's family was so poor from Canada. Of course, you didn't have babies in hospitals back then, right? Especially if you were poor.
Yeah.
So they lost, I think, 2 sets of twins. Wow. Yeah.
No kidding.
Of the 14, 15 or whatever it was, and
Huh. Jeez.
and people they lost a couple young,
Yeah.
early,
Sure.
7 or 8, something like that.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it was very interesting. My mom was one of 8. I mean, we would have, when I was growing up, and even in my young adulthood, we would have 3. You probably had the same thing. I can't even count the number of great nieces and nephews, and great. I even have great nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
You would have 4 dinner cycles to be able to seat everybody.
Yeah. Wow.
So you'd have to go,
What
you'd
a
have to
patient
wash.
family. We would all just keep adding chairs.
No, we had as many chairs as
Nobody-
you could, but we'd run out of plates. So you'd have one go down.
Paper
and then,
plates.
And then
Nobody
you'd have
would
to
wait.
Wash. Oh no, we had to have the glass, the glass plates. was a big holiday.
Yeah.
So we'd sit and like eat 12, 15 at a time. Then they'd rush, and you'd rush 3 people at the
Right.
sink washing the plates.
Well, I
so you could do
remember the
next.
adults would sit in one room and the kids would
We
the
did
other.
that too.
But I don't remember the waiting part because
we did.
Yeah.
that wasn't big on our list.
Yeah. No, we did that one. But I kind of miss it. We don't see families doing that anymore.
Yeah.
They're too separated. Because our family was all around the New England area. You could drive. Now we're flying to family.
Oh, yeah,
It's it's very different.
Spread out.
Everybody's scattered. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that that's better. You know that?
No,
I
it's
miss that.
harder. It's
It is
harder.
harder.
It's harder to stay. But we have communication that's so much better. You can
Yes.
use
Oh,
a
yeah.
cell phone that's cheap. You can send pictures.
It's not the same
constant-
thing, though.
No. It's
But
not
it's
the same.
okay. I get you where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I like being with people. I'm a people person, and I miss the fact that I have times where we can't even have Christmas together anymore.
Yeah.
With my brothers and sisters.
But then there's so many. There's always somebody that comes.
Yes, that's true.
So
That's true
Oh, the
too.
family
it may
that
not
size,
be
yeah.
everybody, but it's a comfortable crowd.
Yes, that's
So
true.
I always find it pretty happy.
That's true.
Well, we're about out of time. You should mention your website again and whatnot so people can find you.
It's dorishohensee.com, and I'm on Facebook, and I've got a website, and I'll be going door to door in Nashua. If you live in Nashua, you'll see me sooner
Excellent.
or later. I'm
Excellent.
going to try to hit every ward, every door.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
Very good. You got anything you want to plug?
Anything I want to plug? Not just yet. I will
All
next
right.
week. I'm
Good,
working on
okay.
something so totally different that you're going to go, what?
Oh, very cool.
But you'll enjoy it. So
All right.
next week we'll do that.
Awesome. All right, I look forward to that. Well, it's good to see you both.
Thank you.
And
you too.
that's it for now. Well, Gary, if you're watching, hope you feel better soon. And we'll talk at y'all later. Bye, everybody.
Bye.